What's up, guys? This is the House from Gun Gamers. A little bit of a different scene tonight. As you can see, I'm actually house sitting for my parents right now, so that's why I'm just out here enjoying the night and having myself a glass of Tullamore Dew. I wanted to make a video, though, and there was a subject that I've actually been mulling over a bit recently due to the fact that I'm coming up, I just realized, on 5 years of the Gun Gamers YouTube channel. And on top of 5 years of the Gun Gamers YouTube channel, about 8 years of still playing Airsoft with, at least some original members of my first team, and then merging into this other team. And the season is getting a late start this year for obvious reasons due to COVID and the whole state of the world being closed. And what I'm seeing now is a lot of the same shakeups and startups and all that normal stuff you see with teams right near the beginning of a season. And it really got me thinking about Airsoft teams. It really got me thinking about what people do with teams, what I've done with my team, my team, really, it's my group's team, our team, more than it's any one person's team. But that actually ties nicely into the subject. So I figured I would have a glass of whiskey, sit outside, and enjoy the nice night. The birds are singing. Hopefully that doesn't get too annoying as the video goes on. And I would reminisce and ruminate about some of the good times that I've had with my team and some of the things and lessons that I think you can take away from that and implement into your own teams or implement as you continue to go forward and play the game. So, cheers. So, for those of you not familiar, so a lot of you are newer viewers. Gun Gamers originally didn't actually start as the team. Gun Gamers was the media branch offshoot of my first Airsoft team that started in 2012. It was actually started by my good friend Kyle, still on the Gun Gamers team, still one of the major contributors here on the channel, and still absolutely one of my best friends. And it started in 2012, and we played a lot of local events. We did our first MilSim together. It was Lion Claw's Operation Lightning Strike in 2012, if anyone remembers that, up in Buffalo. And that was the start of me being on a team. That was really my first experience being in a team environment for Airsoft. And one of the things I remember very vividly about when Kyle started that team, because he had a lot more experience with the Airsoft scene at large than I did at that time, and one of his main priorities at all times was that it would never be a group that took itself too seriously, hence the internet reference name LulzSoft. And it's that's one of those lessons that I think anyone really needs to carry away. You can start a team for any number of reasons. Obviously, Airsoft is a game that has so many different facets and genres and ways to play it that there's a number of different things you can want out of starting a team. You can be performance-oriented, you can be like us, and you can just be shit-posting and drinking-oriented, or you can be very travel-oriented. There's so many different things you can want, and so many reasons you might start a team, whether you want to compete in Speedsoft tournaments, whether you want to be really hard charging at MilSim games, whether you just want to go to open plays and hang out and then go to the bar afterward. But the one lesson that I think works for all of them is never lose sight of what it is you're doing. You are playing toy guns. It's plain and simple. You are playing toy guns. And that should be at the forefront of everyone's mind the entire time that you're doing what you're doing, and that should be, you should have that little bit of silliness to it, that little bit of self-awareness, because the second that you lose sight of the fact that you are playing this toy gun game that you will never be a professional at, because there's really no such thing as a professional Airsoft player outside of a couple of major exceptions who pretty much all have a major media platform and or brand, you are probably never going to be a professional Airsoft player. I mean, even as big as SYG is, as far as I know, all those guys still have day jobs while they run the Speed QB thing, which, obviously they do a lot of great work, and I'm not hating on them at all. I'm just saying that manage your expectations realistically. And manage your expectations realistically and understand exactly what it is you want out of what you can reasonably expect. As LulzSoft continued to develop, as we continued to move forward and do more and more stuff and more cool things and attend more and more games, eventually we rolled in with another team called Executive Outcomes, which looking back on it, I think even the EO guys will admit that naming yourself after a real-world PMC corporation, a little bit cringy. I love you guys, but you know it. And those guys, Garrett was one of their players, is still, obviously, one of the main members of the Gun Gamers channel, one of our big contributors. Joe was a member, Lutz was a member, and at that time, we kind of existed as two separate teams. It was this weird thing initially while we were doing this. Lulsoft was one thing, Executive Outcomes was another, because we were still in that mindset of, well, these two teams are a separate thing. Like, we're all friends and we all hang out, but like the teams are different because we got to have our different team names and team patches and team brand, and we each want to manage our different aspects of our teams because we were very possessive to a certain extent. And honestly, a lot of it comes down to me. I'll be the first person to admit. At that time, it was actually Lutz who proposed the idea first. Lutz and I think Kyle both mentioned it, of why don't we just roll Lulsoft and EO into Gun Gamers and have Gun Gamers be the team. And that was because at the time, it was just me, Kyle, and Ian and Garrett doing the Gun Gamers thing, and that was a separate thing. We treated all these different aspects like brands that we were managing. We treated all those things like we were upholding certain images. We had different expectations and all that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't strive to make a good impression for yourself, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't strive to treat it somewhat like a business in the way that you hold people accountable so that they don't go out and cheat and do a bunch of horrible stuff and then that comes back on you as a team. But we got weirdly, and I say, like I said, I have to own up to it. It was largely me at that point. I was like weird about it. I was like, nah, Gun Gamers is the media thing. Then Lulsoft is the team that's been the team forever, and then EO is the team that's been the team forever. Like, we can't. And then we just wind up merging all that into Gun Gamers. That become bigger and better than it ever was, and let's be honest, I think the results speak for themselves in terms of the games we've gone to, the content we've put out. Everything has been amazing, and as a result of that, that leads into another lesson that I have. Another lesson I have is don't be obsessed with your brand, so to speak, if that makes sense. When you've got a team that maybe has a lot of history and you're thinking about how best to proceed with it, one of the things I learned is don't be attached to a brand. Don't be afraid to evolve, and don't be afraid to learn that, hey, maybe the way we were doing things before wasn't the best way. Maybe we do need to go in a different direction, and maybe we need to set aside our individual identity egos a little bit and figure out, okay, well, what's going to work the best, what makes the most sense, and what's going to let us create this wonderful experience for everybody. And ultimately, I think that that's what we did in large part, and I think that that's worked out very well. So that's my second lesson there, is don't be obsessed with branding. Just really focus on what you want out of the group and evolving in the direction that's going to give you the results that you're looking for. And ultimately, Gun Gamers wound up moving in the direction of becoming a large social group more than it was ever anything branded. It became a social group of these two teams that came together and forsook their old identities to a certain extent. I mean, obviously we'll rock the old team patches still, because we're not going to the Lulsoft patch is great, and the EO patches, that's been around since 2005. But at the end of the day, we did come together on what we really wanted out of this, was this social hangout group where the YouTube thing is like one of the side things that's part of what unites us. And I think that that's been a really good thing for us, which even as big as that's gotten, and even as successful as that's gotten, that's going to lead me into another one of my lessons. This also has something to do with brand management a little bit. Don't go crazy chasing clout and sponsors and, really trying to push your image and really trying to promote yourselves. And this is a rule for Gun Gamers, actually. One of our rules as a team is that if someone doesn't bring it up, we try not to bring up the YouTube channel and promote ourselves. And it is expressly prohibited that any member of the teams unwarrantedly post one of our videos into a group with like some spammy self-promotion type thing, because that's just annoying. Having been on the other side of that, having been in a lot of Facebook groups and a lot of people really aggressively promote themselves, it dilutes the other discussion that's going on. And from the outside perspective, it doesn't make it look like, oh wow, we're this big team with this big presence. Like, if you're a big team with a big presence, they will find you on their own. You don't need to push it on everybody and be this self-promotion machine. And honestly, it can really come off the wrong way. A lesson that I learned with that is Bad Blood 2018. We created this hype video for Bad Blood 2018 when we were running the Black Shirts. We were leading the Black Shirts faction. And when we were leading that faction, I got the idea, and I'm like, oh, well, we're leading the Black Shirts faction. We obviously want to attract, the most ticket sales and have all these guys and have this, huge thing. So we made that hype video, Praise Judy or Else, which I stand by. Hilarious video. It's really funny, and I think it's a really good video from like every aspect of what who we are and what we do. The problem is when you're a team that's relatively new to Bad Blood, because a lot of teams have gone to Bad Blood for 5 or 6 years, and this was our second year. When you're a team that's new to Bad Blood and you're coming out with this big dick ego swinging video about how you're gonna, crush the enemies, and you're recruiting all these people using your media platform, well, what does that do? That paints a target on your back. And and actually, as a result of the bravado that we put out from that, we actually had a little bit of a misunderstanding after the game with the Marxist team. And since then, luckily, we've had a lot more interactions with those guys, and actually now I would call them friends. I'm actually going to be leading a faction at one of their games in a couple of weeks here, and I'm really glad that worked out, guys. I love you guys, but that was the type of situation that you get into, which is kind of weird, totally by accident, when you try so hard to push a certain brand, to push a certain image, and really aggressively promote, that it can rub people the wrong way, especially when you're a new kid on the block, so to speak. And you don't want to do that, ideally, especially if you're like us and your main goal is being a social group above all else, and you don't want to, piss people off before you even meet them, right? Or before you even get a real chance to hang out with them. So keep that lesson in mind. That's a pretty funny story at this point. I mean, it's, I look back at some of the posts we made around that time and some of the things we said about the whole situation. I kind of cringe, but it was a good lesson, and I'm really glad that it happened the way it did. And, looking forward to seeing you guys in Ohio in a couple of weeks. And tying into the self-promoting and the chasing sponsorships, which I mentioned very briefly, but I'm going to mention a little more in depth right now. When you are thinking about sponsorship as a team, a lot of teams will look at sponsorship as something that is a perk or a benefit that grants them a lot of legitimacy, even above the perk or benefit of, hey, maybe we get a discount on product, maybe we get sent things to us. And people will not understand the responsibility aspect of it as well. People will not understand the pros and cons. People will not understand the difficulty of getting sponsored sometimes, or if the sponsorship is very easy, maybe why is it easy? And a lot of people chase a lot of sponsors. And I actually, I've talked about this before on the channel, but I don't know how many people are watching who have seen all the videos and all the bits and pieces. There's 5 years of content on the channel. I can't expect everyone to go through and watch everything. But with sponsorship, another one of the rules of Gun Gamers is that we don't go out of our way to ask anyone for anything. And the reason for that is when you ask someone for something, you owe them one. So let's say, and this is especially pertinent for our YouTube side of things, let's say I were to message, I'm just picking a company out of the air, let's say I were to message Elite Force tomorrow. And I send Elite Force a message, and I'm like, hey, I'd really like to do a video on this product. Could you send us one to review? And they say yes. Now, if that company sends us a product to review, obviously now I'm a little beholden to them because they did me a favor. They sent me that product to review after I had asked them for it. And I was like, oh, well, you send me this product and I'll give you a review of it. And it changes the dynamic a little bit. We strive very much for independence and being totally honest and unbiased as much as possible, or if we are biased, very clearly disclosing that. But we strive to be very data driven. And your data can get skewed, and your interpretations of data can get skewed when you feel like you owe someone a favor. And actually, this would be even worse if it was Elite Force, because I actually really like the people at Elite Force, and if I asked them for something and they sent me something, I would be even more inclined to really, like, and you know, I'm not saying I would do this, but this is how your mental process is going to work, and you're going to have to fight against that if you wind up in this situation. I would be even more inclined to try to give them the benefit of the doubt on a lot of things, and that's not that it's not that their product would be, you know, a bad product necessarily, but that I would be, you know, I'd have a little bit of blinders on because I kind of owe that company something, and that extends just as much to full-on sponsorships as much as products that are sent to you. And it can be tricky navigating the field of sponsorships and whatnot. Our current sponsorship, you know, Amped Airsoft, they approached us, and we're very clear, we don't want you to change a thing. We're going to sponsor you for doing what you're doing. And that was the situation that worked out well for us. For other teams, you know, maybe they'll run into a similar situation. Other teams, maybe there's more responsibility. You have to really represent them on social media very well. You have to help promote their sales and their products. You have to wear their patches on the field, or all kinds of different stuff. And understand fully what you're getting into with that, because I've seen some people and some teams I know who have gotten into that situation of having, you know, one or more sponsors that have expectations and demands, and then the game starts feeling like work. And when Airsoft starts feeling like work, it's very easy to burn out very quickly, and don't I know this? Once Airsoft starts feeling like work, it's easy to burn out quickly because you are not going to get a work-like salary out of it unless you actually truly work in the industry. That's just a fact. So once you're going to fields and you're not really thinking anymore about, well, okay, I just get to fuck around and have fun with my friends, and now you're thinking, well, how am I representing this brand? How am I representing this brand? Am I doing this type of thing? It can be a little tricky, and I'm obviously not saying don't do that, and I'm not shitting on people who have a whole bunch of sponsors, but this is, again, expectation management. You know, be realistic about what you're going to get going in, and know what you're doing as you continue onward, and be ready for that level of responsibility. You know, if a company sponsors you and you go to one of their events, you are going to be expected to put in work as a sponsored player. You're going to be expected to help tear down, clean up, and do all kinds of that other stuff. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. You're not going to be flown out and given the red carpet treatment. That doesn't happen for 99.9% of airsofters. And my final lesson, and the one that I think is the main reason that Gun Gamers next month will be celebrating its 5-year anniversary, and why Lulsoft is 8 years strong, and why Executive Outcomes has existed for almost 15 years. Over 15 years, possibly. Who is on your team should not be a reflection necessarily entirely of who you want to be on the field if you want to have a long-lasting team. Who you have on the team should have as much or more to do with who you like hanging out with, who you vibe with socially, and who you could ride in a car to an event for 6 hours or more with. Because sure, you might have the most kick-ass team ever. You guys might go to every game and just crush it. You might just be amazing players. But if you don't like your teammates, and if you are not a rock-solid group of friends first and foremost, your team is doomed to failure. I think anyone who's on a team that's lasted any amount of time will agree that your team, first and foremost, should be a group of good friends, and that should be the vibe that you're going for. Because once you start focusing on, well, who's really good on the field, who can we recruit for this, it starts becoming about trying to chase that performance, and it starts being less fun, it starts feeling like work, and then it doesn't last. Very quick to burn out that way. So that's the final lesson I'm going to leave you with on this, is your team, first and foremost, should be a group of friends who enjoy playing BB Wars together and who have a good time doing it. Anyway, I'm not quite done with my whiskey, but it's still a nice night. The sun's going down. I'm going to wrap this video up. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you enjoyed some of these stories. And I hope that we're here for another 5 years of Gun Gamers. I never expected we would make it to 5 years. You know, this dumb media project I started with Ian and Kyle 5 years ago, and thought maybe we would cap out at 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers over a few years and keep doing that until I lost interest in Airsoft. But all the people I've met doing this, all the people I've gotten to play with, and all the friends I've made, it's been a great fucking time. Cheers.
Thank you for watching this video from Gun Gamers. We hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. Check the description below if you'd like to buy a t-shirt or a patch, and use the coupon code JUDY10 for 10% off of your next order at Amped Airsoft. Thank you again for watching, and praise Judy.